Hello mate, and welcome back to another exciting Unity tutorial. In this video we're going to do this. As you can see, if I hit my play button, I get a little preview here. My character can run around and jump like I could from the previous tutorials, but now I can fire bullets. They have a little trail of smoke behind them. I'm going to show you how to do the most basic form of this that we can possibly do. Before I get started, a huge thank you to everyone for subscribing and hitting the notification icon. That really helps me out. And of course, an even bigger thank you to my members and patrons. Your names will be running across the screen at the end of the video. If you are interested in supporting the channel, instructions on how to do so can be found in the description down below. So without further ado, let's jump into this. So what we need to do is we need to create our bullet. And we're going to use the same style of hierarchy that we had for our player character, where we had a player, then a container, and then the 3D object. So we're going to create a new, and we're going to create an empty game object, and we're going to call this one bullet. And then inside that we're going to create another empty, and this one is going to be called container. And then inside that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a 3D object, and we're just going to make it a sphere. And we're going to make it nice and small. Let's just bring it out so we can actually see it. We're going to set our scale to, let's have a think. Well, we can set our radius and everything like that afterwards, but let's just set our scale to something like 0.3, 0.3. That looks a bit more like a bullet-sized object, doesn't it? Cool beans. So what we want to do now is create a new material, and I've already done this, but you can just create a new material in here, same as you did before, by creating a new material, and then you can call it whatever you want. I'll just call it bullet 2, like so, and then you can give it whatever properties you want. You can make it kind of metallic looking. Don't really need a texture, but we'll just leave that as is for now. We'll bring up the metallicity, and either way, that's what our bullet's going to look like, but you can play around with setting the material up as much as you like. What we need to do next is actually create a script for our bullet. So we're going to jump into our scripts file. As you can see, I've already got one in there, but I'm going to create a new one. We're going to create a new C# script, and we're going to call this one bullet B. Can you remember how to spell bullet? Bullet B, like so, and then we'll press return. And then if we double click on it, then our code editor will come up, and as you can see, we've got our very basic class file. Now, creating a bullet is actually really mega simple, believe it or not. What we actually need to do is we need to create a couple of properties that are going to dictate how fast the bullet moves and how long the bullet lives for. There's no point having it live for 30 seconds if it's off the screen within 2 seconds. So we want to decide on a lifespan and of course the movement speed that the bullet is going to do. So in the top of our class here, we're going to create a public float, and we'll call it bullet speed. And then we can just set that to arbitrarily, let's say 15F, and then close that line out with a semicolon. And now we're going to give it a public float life span, and we'll give that, I'm going to go with 2 seconds initially, and I think that's probably going to be too long, but we'll make adjustments as we need to. What I'm also going to do is just above these properties, I'm actually going to add a header so that we can differentiate this. So if I go into there, I had a square bracket, and now I go header, and I open brackets, and I do that, and now I can say bullet settings like that, and if I just capitalize the B as well, just so that it looks a little bit more sensible. There we go. So now inside of our Unity engine, we will see the bullet settings as a separate header inside the components, and you'll see that in a few moments when we jump back into it. So now we're going to go into our update loop like so, and we're going to change the position because we want the bullet to move as soon as it appears on the screen. We don't want it to have to wait for anything else really. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the transform.position plus equals transform.forward multiplied by our speed, which is going to be bullet speed, and then multiplied by time dot delta time, and there we go. So that's just going to update the position of our bullet by the speed, and then it's going to multiply it by, because this isn't fixed update, this is update, so this could happen at varying intervals, so we're multiplying it by the time delta time, as in the time since the last update, so that the bullet continues to move at a consistent speed in spite of maybe the frame rate of the game dropping or something like that. So really simple stuff. So now if we hop back into Unity, we've got our different objects here. Let's select our bullet here, and currently it's just a game object. What we need to do is actually add our script to it. And then as you can see, bullet settings, our special heading here, and bullet speed is 15, a bullet lifespan is 2. And if I am to hit play, what you can see is our bullet shoots off into the distance because currently our forward direction is away from the camera, but our bullet is behaving as it's expected to do at this precise moment in time. So while we're here in Unity, what we're going to do now is we're actually going to create a prefab from this bullet. So essentially what that is just a game object that we can instantiate as many times as we want. Now, as you can see in my prefabs, I already have a bullet object, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this one and I'm going to drag it into here, and you can see bullet 1 has now been created like that. And there it is, ready to go. And now you can see that the object in the game hierarchy is now blue instead of white, and that just tells us that this is a prefab. The behaviors will remain exactly the same. It's just there for us to play with, ready to rock and roll basically. Now when I jump back into my player class file, which is the file that we originally started working on, I've added some things here that I'm not going to type for you. I'm just going to demonstrate what they do. So what I've done is I've created a second header here called weapons. And in that section, what I've done is I have created a new game object that I'm calling a bullet prefab. And if I go back to Unity, you can see weapons, bullet prefab, and currently I have my original bullet set to that, but you can just drag the prefab you want onto there and that will work just fine. So jumping back into our code, the next thing, or rather down here, is where we added our original controls. What I've done now is I have up and W as our jump keys, and what I've done is I've done if input get key down space, so the same command that we've used for our previous controls, although this is get key down, not get key like you have with right and left, because you can hold these buttons down, but in order to jump you have to use get key down, and in order to shoot you have to use get key down as well. If we press the space button, what happens is we instantiate a new bullet prefab. We create another copy of that bullet object. That's what this line does. Game object, it creates a game object called bullet object, and we instantiate the bullet prefab, the prefab that we have created. And then we just say that bullet object transform position equals transform dot position. And then the last thing we want to do is we actually need to tell our bullet object which direction is forward, because if you remember, if we came back into our game and we hit the play button, currently our bullet prefab thinks that forwards is away from the camera, which is no use to us whatsoever. So we actually need to change that, and what we do is we have to do bullet transform forward, i.e. the direction that is forward, and then we say if we're looking right, then it's vector 3 right, otherwise it's vector 3 left. And we have a simple bit of logic to say whether or not we're looking right. As you can see here, private bool looking right, and then we set it to true in our start when we basically start the game. And then what you can see is if we are moving to the right, then looking right is true. If we are moving to the left, then we set looking left or looking right to be false. And that's how we decide which direction the bullet wants to be pointing in. So it's really simple. It's not complicated stuff. It's just a case of that penny drop moment when you realize how the code actually goes together. We've just taken our original player class and we've added a couple of little tweaks here just to decide, are we moving left, are we moving right? And then all we do is we set our transform forward. We tell the bullet which way it's facing based on whether or not we are moving left or right. Nice and simple, yeah? So the last thing we need to do is obviously destroy the bullets when their lifespan runs out. So we're going to go back into our bullet class and we're going to add a new line in the update. And what we need to do now is we need to actually subtract however much time has passed from our lifespan. So what we need to do is go bullet lifespan minus equals time dot delta time, like so. So however much time has passed since the last frame will now be subtracted from our bullet lifespan, which is currently 2 seconds. Then we're going to say if bullet lifespan is less than or equal to 0, and we're going to add a little bit of code in here. All we have to do is destroy, and then we're going to pass game object in there. So we're telling Unity to destroy this instance of the game object if the lifespan goes beyond 2 seconds. Nice and simple. So if we come back into Unity, what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to delete this from the scene now, like so. And then I come into my player class and I'm actually going to drag this prefab onto the bullet prefab. So now we have the one that we've just created. And if I go into playing the game, if I hit the spacebar, as you can see, it's firing bullets. Now it's doing it a little bit weird. It's giving us the position, the depth position is a little bit off. But as you can see, we can fire as many as we want, and then after 2 seconds, each one dies. But you can see that in the game's hierarchy. Nice and easy, yeah? So next, what we want to do is quickly review the code for creating the bullet. So here we have our game object. When we press the space bar, we instantiate, we create a new copy of the object. Now, what this line does is that it sets the parent of our bullet to be the parent of the parent object. Sounds a bit weird, I know. But what that essentially means is that when we are running our game, when we create our bullet, it becomes a parent or a child of the game controller, not of the player. As you can see, there it is. And that just saves the player from getting bogged down with too much niff-naff and trivia. It just means that our bullets remain to be a child of the scene and not of the player object. So then we come in and then we give it its position, which is the position of the object parent, i.e. the player. And then we give it its looking forward direction, which is right if we're moving right, left if we're moving left, which is deciphered by these lines of code here. Looking right equals true in the moving right, and then looking right is false if we're moving to the left. So that's nice and simple. I hope you found that useful, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I understand that some people may struggle with some of the concepts here, but this is really kind of basic stuff, so it's really important to try and wrap your head around them. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm sure you will, and I will see you in the next one. But until then, you take damn good care of yourselves, alright? Bye-bye.